Hello everybody and welcome back to buildqueue. This is going to be part 3 in our multi-part series about building Unity projects with Jenkins. Now we are going to be putting together our Unity build script. This is going to be an editor script that is going to be used by Jenkins. Jenkins will reference this editor script and it will build for whichever platform it is that we want to build for. One thing that I realized I haven't referenced so far within this course is we haven't really gotten set up on an IDE. So if you open up Unity Hub and you come over to installs, you find the editor versions that you have already installed. Go ahead and click the cogwheel here. Select add modules. Under dev tools, you can go ahead and install Visual Studio if you want to use Visual Studio, but if you want to use any other IDE that's on your workstation, that'll work too. Okay, let's go ahead and open up our Unity project. Now we aren't going to make any changes to any scenes or anything. What you're going to do is you're going to navigate to project. Under assets, I'm going to create a folder in here. I typically like to have all my scripts inside of a script folder, so put them in here. After you've created your scripts folder, the next thing that you want to do is you want to create an editor folder. Any editor scripts that you create for your projects need to exist within an editor folder. Otherwise, your project's not going to be able to build properly. After you've created your editor folder, go ahead and open it up. You are going to create a C# script, name it build script, select enter, and your script has been created. You will then want to double click on the file that you've created. This will open up the script within the IDE that you have specified. Now, first things first, we don't necessarily need to inherit from mono behavior. So go ahead and remove it, save, go ahead and remove start and update. Those are part of mono behavior. We're not taking advantage of that. As I mentioned in part 1, the first platform that we're going to worry about building for is going to be Windows. So let's go ahead and create a function to handle this. So go ahead and create this function here, public static void build Windows. We don't have a return type, so keep it void. This has to be publicly available for the Unity editor to be able to access this. Now we are not creating any instances of this class. We just want to run the logic that's within this function. So that's why we have this marked as static. What we want to do first within this function is we want to be able to specify a build output directory. So I went ahead and created this path variable here. This isn't going to create the directory, but this is giving us context of where this directory is going to be located. And we are going to be exporting our builds inside of a folder called Windows, which is inside of a folder called builds. And just to give a little bit of background information about the Unity editor, whenever it calls this function, it is put within the context of the Unity project itself. So at the very root of the Unity project, that's where it's going to create our builds folder, and then it's going to create the Windows folder inside of the builds folder. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we are going to want to actually be able to create this directory. And in order to do this, we are going to feed our path variable here into another function that we're going to create next called create directory. So I went ahead and created the function that we're going to be using here. It's another public static void function. It's called create directory, and it's taking in the path from our build Windows function. Since this function here is checking to see if a directory exists, and it's also creating a directory at that location if it doesn't exist, you're going to need to make sure that you're using system.io. So at the very top, make sure that you have system.io imported. Now that we're able to use the script to go ahead and start building directories, the next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to tap into some of the Unity editor build logic. Whenever the Unity editor is building a project, it has its own build player options logic that we are able to tap into ourselves from the script. So we are going to go ahead and do that. Before we can use any of that functionality, you need to make sure that you have imported the Unity editor. So go ahead and type that in at the top using Unity editor. Within the build Windows method, you are going to want to go ahead and initialize build player options. After you've initialized it, there are a few fields that we need to fill out. We will need to find a way to get the scenes that we want to build. If you want to manually specify which scenes, you can feel free to, but we are going to gather that information from the Unity project itself. The next thing is location path name. This is basically what we are going to be naming our executable for Windows here. We'll need to specify the target. The target is which build platform, and then we are going to specify options. Options we're typically going to leave at none. The very first field that I'm going to worry about here is the scenes. I'm going to be putting together a function so I can retrieve a list of scenes that are already staged to be built. And this list of scenes already exists within our Unity project. And down here at the bottom, you can see I have put together the function here. This is basically going to fetch the scenes that are already listed to be built within the Unity project itself. And since this just use the where functionality, you have to make sure that you import system.link. So at the top, make sure that you're using system.link. So back up here at the top, we are back in the build windows function. We are going to go ahead and specify the location path name, and it's fairly simple. It's just a string, and we are injecting the path into the string, and then followed by testgame.exe. This is what we're naming our executable for our Windows build. That's all that you have to really do for this section, and make sure that you put a comma at the end of it. The next field that we have to fill out is target. This is going to be the build platform that we're targeting. So I just specified standalone Windows 64 or 64-bit. And the very last field that we need in order to properly be able to initialize the build player options, we just need to put in build options none. So at this point, the build player options that we have here, they're not going to really do much of anything. These have to be fed into the build player next. The build player is what's going to actually trigger a build of our project. This next line that I've put in here on line 23, this is where all the magic happens. This is build pipeline.buildPlayer, and then we're feeding in the build player options that we just specified. This is actually going to trigger a build. Now we're mostly done, but we have one more optional thing that we can go ahead and do here. So I mentioned in the beginning of this course that I want to be able to feed these artifacts into an artifact repository. So I want to be able to zip all of these contents up after it's done building. So I'm going to go ahead and add that functionality now. If you don't want to follow along for the artifact repository, you don't have to worry about putting this next part in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call upon a function that I'm about to create called zip build, and then you feed in the path. This path is where your project was built out to. Before we create the function itself, you're going to want to go ahead and add another import. So we are going to be using system.io.compression. So make sure that this is added in prior. And I guess just a little bit of housekeeping. I see that these haven't been used, so I'm going to go ahead and discard these at the top. Again, these are systems.collections, system.collections.generic, and Unity engine. Get rid of those and then save again. Now, if you come down to the end of this file, I went ahead and put in the zip build method. This method doesn't necessarily do all too much. It's naming our zip file. If there's already a pre-existing zip file there from a previous build that we don't really want anymore, it'll discard those contents, and then it will replace it with this new zip file. And this zip file is going to zip up everything that's within this path. And that's everything that we should need in order to build the project from command line, which is what we are basically going to be doing from our Jenkins pipeline. So before we really get started with the Jenkins pipeline, let's go ahead and test it out ourselves with git bash. So go ahead and open git bash. You can go to the lower left hand corner and type in git bash. The first thing that we're going to need to do is we are going to actually need to get our Unity installation path. So you want to go to Unity Hub also. You want to go to installs, and you want to copy this path here. This is the path of where it installed our Unity editor that we're using. Back over here within git bash, going to put quote. You're going to paste in this path, clean it up a little bit. In quote, you're going to type in -quit, -batch mode, -project path, beginning quote, and then you're going to find the path of your Unity project. So you're going to go to File Explorer, and then you're going to navigate to your project, copy the path, paste the path into git bash, end quote, space execute method, and we are going to want to reference our build windows method that's a part of our build script. In order to do this, we will put build script, which is the name of our script, .build windows, which is the name of our method. If you have any namespaces for your class, then you're probably going to have to put the namespace first before build script. And we are going to want to see the output of the Unity editor. In order to do that, you put a space, -log file, space, dash. And before you press enter, you need to make sure that your Unity editor is closed. So open up Unity. If it's open, go ahead and close out of it, navigate back to git bash, and then press enter. Now it'll take a little bit for this to actually build. Whenever it's finished, we'll go check our build location to see if all the artifacts are there. Now everything appears to be done over on git bash, so open up File Explorer, open up your project location, and I see that there's a builds folder in here now at the root of the Unity project. I open it up and there's windows.zip. This is correct, this is what we are looking for. And let's go ahead and navigate inside of Windows, and we can see the executable for our game. I'm just going to run the game real quick, and the game works. So this is all the work that we are going to be doing for this video. The next thing that we need to do is we need to publish all of our changes to our repository. And in order to do that, you need to navigate to your project folder. You need to right click, open git bash, and I actually already pushed my work, but I wasn't recording, so I'm just going to give you the commands to push everything properly again. You are going to want to type git stage dot. After your work has been staged, the next thing that you want to do is you want to commit it, and you want to add a commit message. Mine just says this adds in our Unity editor script used for building. You'll want to go ahead and run this, and then you'll want to type in git push, and that should push to your repository. So we're able to build everything from command line. Everything should be working properly. So I think this puts us in a good spot for part 4 of this course, but that is going to be the end of part 2. We managed to add our build script to our project. We can build it properly. The project is zipped up, and we tested out our project to make sure that it still ran after building. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you've learned something new. We will have a lot to go over in part 4 over on the Jenkins side.